Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 711 for the 22nd of May 2022. Lots of double numbers in there. We have a new government here in Australia. Last night, the election results came in, and many of us were glued to our TV sets to watch the results. And I will say that my local Member of Parliament will be, by tomorrow, I think, the new Prime Minister. Congratulations to Anthony Albanese. And it might interest you to know, those of you who remember the old days of the think tank we used to have on the Skeptic Zone, and we do sometimes still have that, where we used to get together at the club at the end of the street. Well, that's exactly where the Labour Party and Anthony Albanese held their victory celebrations last night. But coming up on this week's show, they're back. Yes, they're back again. UFOs, unidentified flying objects, UAPs, whatever you want to call them. Have they ever really gone away? No, they have not really gone away. They're just not so interesting anymore. No, that's the wrong way to put it. I mean, they've had their chance. Honestly, aliens, you've had your chance. If you wanted to let us know you're here, you've had decades to do it. Why are you so shy? In my humble opinion, I think that aliens like to disguise their spaceships as jetliners and balloons, it seems to me. Anyway, we're going to hear about yet another official UFO investigation, this time in the halls of the US Congress. And something that occurred to me while I was reading this report is the phrase from that movie, A Few Good Men. You can't handle the truth, which is an accusation leveled at skeptics all the time. You skeptics are just afraid of the unknown. You can't handle the truth, etc., etc. Whereas it is the exact opposite. The die-hard believers in things like UFOs or psychic powers or whatever simply cannot handle the truth when the truth suggests strongly that these things simply aren't real. As in, they're not aliens in spaceships. Can you handle the truth? Find out at the top of the show. Following that, it's the Australian Skeptics Newsletter, read once again from Canada, but this time by a guest reader, Troy Hill. Probably a distant relation to Adrian Hill, as in her son, will read this week's newsletter. And I wonder if Troy will live up to the excellent example set by his mother. Find out with Australian Skeptics Newsletter a bit later on. Then to round off the show, a dive back into those digital archives from around the world, those news clippings, magazines and so on, and an evergreen, like UFOs really. We have another evergreen topic, that of psychic detectives, which is really a mixture of people who know full well they don't have psychic power but like to pretend they do and bother the police, or people who really, really think they're getting messages from fairies or pixies or dreams or dead people or the cosmos or whatever it is, and sincerely think they can help police solve crimes. As we like to say, psychics don't help police, they hinder police. A big shout out to those people who find themselves having to work this weekend. Sometimes you can get away to a lovely little retreat. But sometimes you have to actually sit down and write reports and do work. Just yesterday, in fact, I spent many hours putting together a review and a report about the new movie from Brian Dunning, which is Science Friction, which we've discussed before on the show. So there I was, typing away on my keyboard. Well, it wasn't so bad. It was a rainy day anyway. And a shout out to Brian Dunning if you're listening. Of course you're listening. You never miss the show. And if you haven't seen Science Friction, folks, by the way, Make it a priority. It's available on Amazon Prime, and it's available on the Tubi system, Tubi, those streaming services. Well, a new government. I tell you what I did yesterday, a tradition here in Australia when you turn up at the polling booth to cast your vote, quite often outside, is a barbecue, a sausage sizzle. I had my democracy sausage. I prefer it with mustard, but there you go. So while I run downstairs and have toast and dream about my democracy sausage, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. Oh, you remember that. I'm sure you remember that. The classic tones from the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Now, for me, as a young teenager, how old was I? Mid-teenager? Something like that. When the movie came out, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, it was right smack bang in the middle of UFO fever, the 1970s. No wonder there was a movie about UFOs. Well, it was also inspired by the success of Star Wars, I would think. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? Nevertheless, what a time it was, because we had, or at least I had, somewhat limited information. So we tended to believe these things because that's how they were presented. It really was a case, and you would remember from various Trove newspaper reports I've read from the decades past, that it really was a case of many people thinking any day now, or they're already here, or they've crashed, or something like that. They're definitely there. There must be hundreds of alien spaceships zipping around our atmosphere. But as I've said before, UFOs, oh, you are the gift that just keeps on giving. And we turn to a story reported just in this last week in one of our local online newspapers, and it was covered on the TV news just last night, I seem to remember. And last night, as I record, being a Wednesday night here in Australia. And this comes from news.com.au, Henry Holloway and US Sun. This is the byline. US recovered UFO wreckage. Congressman claims as public hearing gets underway. Now, my initial thought was, oh, here we go again, and it's a flash in the pan, and the story will be forgotten about, and that'll be the end of that. Of course, that'll never be the end of that. Anyway, the story says, as a landmark public hearing on UFOs begins in Washington, a member of Congress claims the U.S. has recovered wreckage from one. A member of Congress in the United States has claimed his country has wreckage recovered from a UFO, as the subject takes center stage in Washington. U.S. politician Tim Burchett told the U.S. Sun he has been informed by reliable sources that material has been recovered from the objects or craft that have been reported in the skies over the U.S. Now, I'll stop here briefly to say I mentioned that this investigation, this new procedure was reported here in Australia on the TV news last night, and every outlet that reported the story, without fail, used the same now debunked videos that we've talked about on the Skeptic Zone before, namely the Tic Tac, the Go Fast, the pyramids in the sky. And I don't think there's anything that skeptical groups or scientists can say which will stop them, because they look impressive. They're great bits of video to use. And there's an old adage in the media, there's no story without pictures or something like that. So no matter how many times they've been debunked or explained, they're just going to be used again and again and again. We just have to accept that, I guess. The Tennessee Republican declined to elaborate further, as he said the information had been passed to him in a, quote, classified setting, end quote. Maybe it was on a UFO. Quote, and this is Mr. Burchett speaking, I've been told by multiple sources we have recovered something from these craft or objects. He was speaking just hours before the first UFO hearing in Washington in decades as the topic steps from the fringe into the mainstream. You would think this man has better things to do, like represent his constituents. UFO discussion in the United States has shifted from conspiracy theories to a genuine national security concern after a string of servicemen and defense officials came forward regarding their strange encounters. Well, again, if it's these videos we've already discussed, and they should go directly to Mick West and save everybody a lot of time. Mick West, of course, being the man who has done superb analysis of these videos using the data on the videos themselves. And I will link to Mick West once again in this week's show notes. And the most striking of these was the trio of leaked... Oh, don't say tic-tac and gimbal and go fast, please. Please. And the most striking of these was the trio of leaked videos showing UFOs operating near US warships and being pursued by fighter planes, known as tic-tac, gimbal, and go fast. Mr. Burchett, however, warned he does not have faith in the upcoming congressional hearing, believing that whatever the US knows will continue to be covered up by institutions in Washington, D.C. No, that's not a conspiracy theory at all. No, of course not. And he said full disclosure that revealed evidence of alien life visiting Earth could change the world. No doubt. Saying he believes it would help people put terrestrial differences to bed. That's debatable, maybe. He said it would do away with the, quote, bogeyman from overseas, end quote. His view is an echo of the 1987 speech by US President Ronald Reagan, who famously said, "I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world." Mr. Burchett believes the public, quote, needs to know, end quote, the truth about what is going on with the UFOs. And just remember that UFOs, the term UFOs, is simply equated with most people with alien spaceships, and not its true meaning, unidentified flying objects. And he says, all we do is cover up. Let's just be transparent. What is wrong with telling the world and saying we've got this? We are going to share it and we can figure out what it is together. Well, the problem with that is if there's nothing there to begin with, mate. He said, I don't think a lot is going to come from the hearings. It's bringing in the people who create the problem to fix a problem. This is just pure conspiracy theorists talking. He blasted recent bogus Pentagon reports on UFOs as being like Swiss cheese due to the amount of redactions. Mr. Burchett said, we need full disclosure. This is what we know and this is what we don't know. We can and should do better. This is an old story. I mean, this thinking, they're hiding everything from us. They won't tell us the truth. This is just recycled from decades and decades. Well, it has been recycled over the decades by conspiracy theorists. The issue also stretches beyond the United States, with the congressman adding he has heard Russia and China are also interested in the UFO topic, having had their own encounters. Is this report from the 50s and the 60s and the 70s? Honestly. He said he does not believe the objects are advanced technology from Moscow or Beijing, as some have suggested. Well, I think if Moscow had that technology, they wouldn't be blundering as badly as they are at the moment. And he added there is still a lot of resistance among politicians who don't want to touch the issue with a 10-foot pole for political reasons. He said, I don't care if they abuse me. I think the American people need to know. Oh, come on. This is really from the 70s, isn't it? He said, I even put out a T-shirt on my website saying, more people believe in UFOs than in Congress. And that's the truth. Oh, what a card this man is. However, Mr. Burchett added he does believe the stigma around discussing UFOs is starting to break down. This is the old thing. Yeah, we've heard this for decades and decades, and they laugh at us. Oh, you people who don't believe in UFOs, you skeptics, you mock us, and you bully us and you belittle us. It's something we've heard again and again. It's the same thing we hear from the scam psychics out there and so on. And he called for a blanket amnesty for officials currently restricted by non-disclosure agreements from talking about UFOs. Mr. Burchett told The Sun Online the game-changing moment in the UFO debate was the US Navy videos, the same ones, my friend, the same ones that have been thoroughly analysed and explained. And he has personally spoken to US pilots who have encountered the mysterious phenomena. He said, the only reason we are talking about this right now is the leaked US Navy videos and the pilots who saw them, he said. And the same ones, we know. He said, I've talked to other pilots as well who have seen things, and these people are some of the best in the world and very patriotic. Well, that'll do it. These are people in their 20s who are very confident in their abilities. A lot of them just laughed about it as they simply had no control. It's wild stuff. The objects turn on a dime and accelerate at an incredible rate with no heat trail. It's miraculous. The congressman believes there can only be two explanations for the encounters. Either it is of alien origin, or it could be US black technology. But he is doubtful of latter due to the ways the objects appear to move. He told The Sun Online, according to our technology, a human couldn't survive inside that. He would be turned into a ketchup packet. He says there is no heat from the front end from friction or at the back from propulsion, which is obviously something we currently can't do and can't control. What videos is he looking at? And he doesn't believe, what some experts have suggested, that the revelations about alien life could damage society and the world's religions. In God's vast universe, if you think we are the best God can do, you hold God in low esteem. Even if you believe in God, there must be something else out there. We can't just be it. Infinity is a long way. The congressman said he has been interested in UFOs since the 1970s. Well, me too. And he said there have been reports of strange objects in the sky since the dawn of humankind, pointing to examples in the Bible and in ancient Egypt. No, he's not a conspiracy theorist at all. This week, the House Intelligence, Counter-Terrorism, Counterintelligence and Counterproliferation Subcommittee is holding a landmark public hearing on UFOs. Ronald S. Moultrie, I think that's pronounced, Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security, and Scott W. Bray, Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence, will both answer questions on the highly controversial topic. Hopefully they'll set him straight. U.S. Congressman Andre Carson, the committee's chairman, said, the American people expect and deserve their leaders in government and intelligence to seriously evaluate and respond to any potential national security risks, especially those which we do not fully understand. Fair enough, and so they should. U.S. Congressman Adam Schiff added, there's still much to learn about UAP and the potential risks they may pose to our national security. He describes the issue as, quote, one of the greatest mysteries of our time, end quote, and said he hopes to, quote, break the cycle of excessive security and speculation with truth and transparency, end quote. What is going on with UFOs in the United States? UFOs have stepped from the fringe conspiracy theories to a genuine national security debate in the US. Well, Pentagon officials took the unprecedented step to confirm a trio of remarkable videos which showed US encounters with UFOs. And I'll just say the fact that this story is not reporting what they really are, as analysed by Mick West and others, means that it's just a sexy story, as they say. It's a great story. Aliens and things in the sky. Why bother Why bother bursting this bubble? The debate is still open as to what the phenomenon caught on film were, but it made clear to everyone something is in the skies. True, something was in the skies. Perhaps the most striking was a video known as Tic Tac, named due to its shape, which showed an unidentified object being pursued by fighter planes. The US also confirmed the existence of Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, AATIP, a $12 million Pentagon program set up to study UFOs before being disbanded in 2012. Eventually, it was replaced by the UAP task force in June 2020 after a vote by the US Senate Intelligence Committee. And again, fair enough. I mean, if, there's genuine concern about objects in the sky which they don't know about, then they should be investigated. Fair enough. Any country would do that in the interests of national security. Defense chiefs since confirmed a number of leaked UFO videos and photos which were submitted to the task force for investigation. Why this sudden rush for transparency? No one outside the secretive wings of the US government currently knows for sure. And as a tacked-on addendum to the 5,500-page COVID relief bill passed in December, the Director of National Intelligence Office was ordered to compile a report on UFOs within 180 days. The UAP report dropped as expected on June 25, and while not giving much away, it did not rule anything out either, as much of it remains classified. The US have acknowledged that UFOs, or whatever they are, jet airliners, are real and a potential threat to national security, as they appear to be able to enter restricted airspace with total impunity. Barack Obama and Bill Clinton have both discussed the topic and seem to acknowledge something is going on, a massive turnabout from previous total denial the government had regarding anything to do with UFOs. Is it aliens? Officially, the US position is simply, we don't know yet. This article originally appeared on the US Sun and is reproduced with permission. And I'll certainly link to that original article courtesy of the US Sun. And if I click over there right now, the first three images at the top of the page are the same three images from the videos which Mick West has so thoroughly analysed and explained. So what can we expect from this investigation, I wonder? Well, if they do their jobs properly and somebody explains to the committee exactly what these things are as analysed by skeptical groups and scientific groups, then I expect the conclusions to be made public, and they are reasonably mundane, I guess. But, of course, that will only add to the feelings and the certainty of the conspiracy theorists that these things are being covered up and the truth is still being hidden, and what are they hiding from us? And of course they're not just jet airliners, they must be alien technology, and on and on and on it goes. It's a pity that with everything going on with society at the moment around the world and in the US, that money can be, well, arguably just simply wasted on such a committee after all these years. And the more time goes by, the more I consider UFOs, spaceships from other planets visiting Earth, more and more a relic of decades gone by, a relic of our society, a cultural phenomenon. But they're still going on, so this cultural phenomenon still exists, and it is almost the perfect storm to feed the conspiracy theorists. And again, links in this week's show notes to the original item and links to Mick West's elegant breakdown of the videos in question.
Allora ciao, io mi chiamo Professore Dave, io ti voglio insegnare tutte le cose sulla scienza. Parliamo di fisica, di chimica, biologia, astronomia, matematica e tante altre cose. Guardami su YouTube, arrivederci. Hey everyone, this is Professor Dave. I want to teach you about all kinds of things regarding science. I want to tell you about physics. I want to tell you about chemistry, biology, astronomy, math, and many, many more things. Come check me out on YouTube. The channel is called Professor Dave Explains. Take it easy.
He knows a lot about the science stuff. Professor Dave Explains.
Hello everyone, it's Troy Hill, a replacement Canadian filling in for Adrian to read the highlights from the Australian Skeptics Newsletter. This is newsletter number 148. You can subscribe to this newsletter and get it delivered to your inbox every other week, complete with links to all the stories. Just visit www.skeptics.com.au. But now, let's get to the newsletter and see what Tim Mendham has lined up for us. Hi all, says Tim. Australia just had a general election yesterday, so naturally there are stories about psychic crocs choosing leaders and astrology's take on the date and candidates. Needless to say, we don't have any of that nonsense here, just Geller's rat and naughty ghosts. But we wonder how many psychics and seers out there predicted the Labour Party would win. Maybe not too surprising. Read on, Tim. Okay, Tim, I'll do just that. Experience of those who underwent gay conversion therapy. 3 Australians who underwent conversion therapy to change their sexual orientation say there was nothing therapeutic about it and call for a national ban on the practice. 2 states and 1 territory have already done so: Victoria, Queensland, and the Australian Capital Territory. Paranormal beliefs and cognitive function. A paper looks at 71 studies spread over 40 years that explored a range of cognitive functions, such as reasoning ability, thinking style, and memory. Overall, the findings align with the hypothesis that beliefs in paranormal phenomena are associated with differences or deficits in cognitive function. For example, a particularly consistent link was found between paranormal beliefs and an intuitive thinking style. Is that a deficit? However, the paper says that there were some methodological issues with the studies. Shocker. Prayers in Parliament. Canadian style, eh? Members of British Columbia's Parliament recently voted against a motion that would have abolished the practice of opening daily sessions of the House of Commons with prayer. Nevertheless, secularists are pledging to continue the fight to end the practice of legislative prayers. BC humanists are urging people to email their MPs. The same thing happens in Australia. The Lord's Prayer is recited before each day, which must impress Muslims, Jews, Hindus, Buddhists, Confucians, Taoists, animists, and atheists. How did we fall for the junk science of forensics? From polygraphs to bite marks, this article looks at a book that, quote, carefully and unarguably explains that almost every forensic science is unreliable, and most are entirely bogus, end quote. And not just polygraphs, but arson investigation, hair microscopy, bullet lead analysis, voice spectrometry, handwriting, and bloodstain spatter analysis. One area that does work is the book author's own specialty: DNA analysis. Also, Brian Dunning over at the Skeptoid podcast covered much of the same story. See episode number 821 from March 1st, 2022. Does psychic ability use radio waves? Not sure if this article on an experiment in 1977 should be down in the bottom section of the newsletter, but it concerns the search for a submerged wreck using psychic messages from remote viewers hundreds of miles away. Quote, if you ever wanted the one thing that provided proof of psychic ability, this experiment was as close to ideal as you could possibly find. There is very little to no ambiguity, and there is almost nothing for skeptics to contest. End quote. maybe down at the bottom after all. We're kicking into production of the June issue of the magazine with a special feature on the use and abuse of science by pseudoscience, riding on the coattails of those who know by those that don't. But in the meantime, the March 2022 issue of The Skeptic is out, and it features a look at the tics and tactics of high-level athletes to improve their performance, a combination of superstition and pseudoscience that is nonetheless very influential on fans and would-be champions. You can read that tics and tactics piece as a sample article from the March issue by visiting skeptics.com.au. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time to do so. Naughty Ghosts 1. Ghost Hunter stalked by violent spirit. The ghost who won't go away, moves things around, gets aggressive, and pushes the ghost hunter down some stairs. Naughty Ghosts 2. This next item took place in Scotland, so I will adjust my reading accordingly. Psychic claims ghost violated him. Psychic ghost hunter claims he was violated by a ghost while visiting an historic jail in Scotland. He felt what he described as an embarrassing and not pleasant experience. Whatever happened to Casper the Friendly Ghost? Psychic on origin of Friday the 13th. 5-minute interview on YouTube that draws everything into one package. Psychic powers, energies, bad vibes, numerology, astrology, everything. That is, except Friday the 13th being significant. And the origin story is dubious. UK lottery winners go ghost hunting. They won the lottery, gave up their jobs, and went hunting. And if you won £10,000 a month for the next 30 years, what would you spend it on? Obviously, go to every skeptics convention around the world, starting with the next Australian Skeptics Convention in November. Details soon. Elusive rat on psychic's remote Scottish island. Wait, Scottish? Volunteers made 35 trips to get rid of a rat from the small Scottish island that Uri Geller bought in 2008. The obvious question, why was the rat so elusive? Couldn't Geller use his psychic powers to point out where it was? Or at least bend it to his will? Well, I've run out of time. A polar bear is attempting to invade my house. Until next time, if Richard will let me back, this is Troy Hill.
Dr. Harriet Hall, MD, known to thousands as the Skepdoc, a retired family physician and former Air Force flight surgeon. She writes about medicine, so-called complementary and alternative medicine, science, quackery, and critical thinking. Harriet now has a free course, a series of 10 video lectures on science-based medicine and alternative medicine. The videos and an accompanying course guide can be found by following the link at skepdoc.info or by visiting web.randy.org/educational-modules.html. Topics covered in the series are science-based medicine versus evidence-based medicine, what is CAM, chiropractic, acupuncture, homeopathy, naturopathy and herbal medicine, energy medicine, miscellaneous alternatives, pitfalls in research, and science-based medicine in the media and politics. Harriet covers each topic in a matter-of-fact, no-nonsense way that's sure to educate and entertain. skepdoc.info.
It's time once again to head to those digital archives from around the world. Normally it's Trove at trove.nla.gov.au, but this week we're going further afield once again to the United States and looking at some of the newspapers there and another classic of skepticism and skeptical investigation, that old chestnut, psychic detectives. Now, these are people, psychic detectives, who claim, first of all, they have psychic or paranormal power, and further claim they use this extraordinary power to assist police in solving crimes. Whereas, as far as we can tell from our investigations and other investigations worldwide, I'm thinking of my friend Ben Radford, these people can be well-meaning, but ultimately they hinder police with their inquiries. They don't help, they hinder. They delay police investigations, they send police on wild goose chases, they provide irrelevant information. And a quick look at psychic detective on Wikipedia says, a psychic detective is a person who investigates crimes by using purported paranormal psychic abilities. Examples have included postcognition, the paranormal perception of the past, psychometry, information gained from objects, telepathy, dowsing, clairvoyance, and remote viewing. In murder cases, psychic detectives may purport to be in communication with the spirits of murder victims. And the page lists prominent cases where psychic detectives, so-called psychic detectives, have been used, and the skeptical rebuttal and response from people like Joe Nickel, Ben Radford, Banachek, of course, Steve Shaw. And indeed, one of the people mentioned here is the subject of our first clipping, a so-called psychic by the name of Noreen Rainier. And it says here, Noreen Rainier claimed to have solved the murder of Kimberly McAndrew, who was murdered August 12, 1989. 6 years after McAndrew went missing, the Halifax Regional Police hired Rainier to help. Rainier gave the police 3 interviews, which were recorded and obtained for review by Tampa Bay Skeptics founder Gary P. Posner. Using psychometry, Rainier claimed to channel the murder victim. After a long analysis of the tapes, Posner states that Rainier took the detectives, quote, on a wild goose chase, end quote. All Rainier's statements were misleading, vague, or incoherent, never leading to anything solid that could be verified. Rainier assured the police that the body would be found before Christmas, saying it would be, quote, a nice Christmas present for everybody, end quote. As of 2018, the body of Kimberly McAndrew has not been discovered, and nothing that Rainier said on the 3 recordings has assisted the police in any way. Recordings of Noreen Rainier can be found here, and there is a link. Well, why don't we play just a quick snippet, a quick example of one of the recordings, and I think it'll give you a better understanding. So let me play that now.
Maybe some thinning or some lightness in it. I don't know what that is, but I feel that. I feel short neck around the person. I feel more full or roundedness in the face itself. There's an old scar and injury, birthmark, beauty mark, imperfection on the face itself. Eyebrows would be thick, more bushy, more upwardness. Eye itself would be small, maybe a little indentation. Nose would be short, but some width to it. Mouth would be wide. Chin would be strong but short. Face would be broad. Ears would be open, full. You can see them big, are away from the head. Scar from automobile accident. That's it. Okay, stop. Okay. Snoring again. Are you all catching on how this works?
Sure. Yeah, I think we're doing all right.
I think you're doing great.
So there you go. It's almost bordering on rambling, just vague descriptions, and sometimes that's all the police get. And there have been times where police will get lots and lots of information like this and cherry pick the bits that seem to fit the case, and then they'll say, that's amazing, the psychic knew about the case. It's just human nature. We've seen it again and again and again. And it's almost worth commenting that police, as part of their training at the academy, should be prepared to deal with this sort of psychic interference, shall we say, and not fall for the cherry picking and the confirmation bias. But let's turn to the pages of the Altoona Mirror, published on the 23rd of September 2005, Altoona being in Pennsylvania. Under the banner, The Sixth Sense, Virginia psychic offers information into death of Cambria County teen, by Phil Ray, staff writer. Kathy Yarner of Loretto was near tears Thursday as she explained how a psychic detective gave her hope that police may find her son's killer. I am praying there will be accountability for the person who took my son's life, Yarner said outside the Altoona Hotel where coroners from across Pennsylvania met. The coroners had heard from a psychic detective who reportedly has provided clues in 400 cases in 38 states and 6 foreign countries. The psychic, Noreen Rainier of Lynchburg, Virginia, was asked by Yarner and her family to look into the death of her son Calvin, shot on the front porch of a farmhouse July 10, 2003. The state trooper visited the scene, asked several young men what occurred, and, based on their statements, ruled the death a suicide. Kathy Yarner did not believe that story, saying that her 17-year-old son was planning his future with his girlfriend. And that was page 1, and we turn to page 5, where the story continues under the heading Police and Courts. Then it says, Psychic. Woman uses victim's personal items during readings. So that's psychometry, of course. And the story continues. Blair County Coroner Patricia Ross and Chief Deputy Coroner Jeffrey A. Geyer didn't believe the suicide story either. They concluded, and a coroner's jury agreed, that it was impossible for the young man to shoot himself as described by witnesses. While the shooting occurred in Cambria County, Ross handled the death because Calvin Yarner died at Altoona Regional Health System Altoona Hospital campus. State police from Ebensburg and Cambria County's district attorney haven't adopted the coroner's ruling. They are sticking with suicide. Kathy Yarner said Thursday that Rainier's review of the case confirmed that her son's death wasn't suicide. And I'll just stop there to say that is very worrying when somebody who claims to have psychic powers is giving advice to grieving parents like that. Rainier gave several clues as to whom she said fired the shots. When shown a picture, she picked out who she says is the killer. Kathy Yarner said the information was given to the FBI and that it would also be forwarded to Cambria County authorities, but she said, "We've had little cooperation from law enforcement." Kathy Yarner would not identify the person Rainier described as her son's killer, and neither Rainier nor Yarner would discuss the clues Rainier provided. "What we hope will happen is accountability for who took my son's life," Kathy Yarner said. As of Thursday, Cambria officials hadn't received the new information. Assistant District Attorney Patrick Kinnery of Cambria County said that Cambria officials issued their conclusions in the case August 12, 2004, and no new evidence has altered that view. Psychic talks to coroners. Rainier spoke to coroners, deputy coroners, and police officers in the ballroom of the Ramada Inn, Altoona, discussing how she became a psychic detective specializing in murder and missing persons cases. Many of her cases have been featured on court TV. Rainier wasn't always a psychic, but she discovered her abilities 30 years ago as a divorced mother of 2 working in public relations. She says she was involved in meditation when she heard a voice. She experienced a surge of energy, her hands became hot, and she relayed a message to another woman from a long-deceased grandmother. She began to practice and develop her psychic abilities. Rainier's reputation grew when she began working on a case of a serial rapist. She predicted the rapist was an individual involved in something that went, quote, round and round, end quote, wearing a uniform with a scar on his leg. She predicted in November that the suspect would be arrested before Christmas. The rapist was a driver of a cement truck and wore matching work pants and shirt. He was arrested before Christmas. Rainier said she did not solve the case, but was able to provide clues. The psychic said she uses a personal item, like a ring from the victim, that inspires her visions. In the case of Calvin Yana, she used a necklace he wore often. Now, further investigation on the case of this poor young fellow, Calvin Timothy Yana, reveals that the case remains a mystery, but I cannot see any description here of anybody who has been charged with the murder. And I'm finding other accounts of the same story where the mother turned to Rainier. I'm not surprised. I mean, you can understand if this poor young man took his life, it would be hardly surprising that the parents would not want to accept that. But again, as far as I can see, the case still is not clear. Alas, many cases like this remain unsolved. But now we'll turn to the Times record from 1977 on October the 14th. And this appears to be a newspaper from New York. And on page 9, Sight Makes Him Lonely, by Lisa Robert, staff writer. Colony. He sees himself as getting tired and older, being dogged persistently by those seeking his help, the loneliest man in the world. Yet Peter Hurkos, considered by experts to be the world's foremost psychic, with his power, his gift for helping people, and his fame, the man himself could be considered one of the world's most fascinating men. Hurkos, who gained fame in this country and abroad as a psychic detective working on cases involving missing persons and murder victims, recently completed work on a film, Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep, in which he played himself, a psychic detective, helping to solve murders in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Taking time from a work schedule that takes him to all corners of the globe, he relaxed with friends in their Colony East apartment and spoke about his life, which was radically changed following an accident in 1941. Suffering from a brain injury when he fell from a ladder in his native Holland, he lay unconscious for days in a hospital in The Hague. When he regained consciousness, he had developed a talent for seeing into the past, present and future, where he saw the unseen and knew the unknown, using his new found gift. Hurkos, now 66, a large man with piercing eyes and slightly greying dark hair, became involved in solving such famous murder cases as the Boston Strangler, the Sharon Tate multiple murders, and the case of Ronald Hughes, the missing Manson lawyer, as well as that of the Ann Arbor co-ed murders upon which his latest movie was based. With an intense look on his face, Hurkos said that he was called into that case following the murder of several co-eds in the city. Using his method, psychometry, the ability to visualize past associations of physical objects by touching the object, Hurkos determined that the killer was a man named Joe, 6'2", and drove stolen motorcycles. Accurate in most of his information, it was the killer himself who called Hurkos, telling him that his name was John, and threatened that if the psychic detective did not leave town, another co-ed would be murdered. Another co-ed was murdered, but through Hurkos' work, police were able to apprehend the killer. Really? That's a mighty big claim. Working on the Sharon Tate murder brought the crime closer to home for the psychic. Included in the mass murders at the Tate mansion was Jay Sebring, a Hollywood hairstylist who did Hercos' hair and was a personal friend. Searching the house after the murders, the psychic detective discovered contrabands which had been overlooked by the police. This discovery and Hercos' powers led the police to the Charles Manson cult, who were later convicted for the murder. A case which brought him most notably into the public eye was that of the Boston Strangler, in which 13 people were killed. Most recently, the psychic detective was asked to help the New York City police in searching for the .44 caliber killer in the Son of Sam murder cases. Contacted by the city's secretary to the mayor to help in the search, Hercos told the city officials that the killer, who had stalked the city's boroughs, was about to be apprehended. 4 days later, David Berkowitz, allegedly son of Sam, was captured. Use of his gift once involved his family. Hercos, looking into the future, saw that one of his daughters would fall to her death near the family's wine cellar. While the foreseeing of the incident was accurate, it was Hercos who was to fall down the 9 feet into the wine cellar. Hearing his daughter near the cellar's entrance, the psychic raced out only to fall, losing one of his right fingers in the incident. While leading a life which has brought him fame, fortune, and the envy of people, Hercos sees the other side of the glamour, which makes him, quote, the loneliest man in the world, end quote. Clutching his cigar in his fingers and wearing a tired expression on his face, the psychic said that his work has made him lonelier and separated him from his family. Often, when I am away working on cases which I have to go underground, I can't even communicate with my family during these times, he said in his heavy Dutch accent, or my approximation of it. It makes it very hard. When I'm working on cases, my wife worries about what could happen to me with these people. It's a very lonely life. Despite the disadvantages that come with his gift, at the age of 66, Hercos appears to be thriving on his career. Accepting less murder cases, he is working with the government on cases that he is not at liberty to discuss, advising business concerns and dealing with other areas of crime, such as counterfeiting and smuggling. Asked if he is considering slowing down, Hercos said he intends to continue working with his gift and rattles off a schedule of his travels through the end of the year. Proclaiming that his father worked into his 80s, the world's foremost psychic said, I've got a lot of years left to go. And let's have a quick look to see what Wiki has to say. Peter Hercos, born Peter van der Hoek on the 21st of May 1911 in the Netherlands, died 1988, was a Dutchman who allegedly manifested extrasensory perception after recovering from a head injury and coma caused by a fall from a ladder when aged 30. He came to the United States in 1956 for psychic experiments, later becoming a professional psychic who sought clues in the Manson family murders and the Boston Strangler case. And it goes on, and there's a section here called Refuted Claims. Hercos and his supporters maintained that he was a great psychic detective. In 1964, Attorney General Edward W. Brooke of Massachusetts said Hercos had come uncannily close to describing the person suspected of the Boston Strangler case. By 1969, he cited the successful solution of 27 murder cases in 17 countries. However, in some cases, the detectives assigned to these cases countered that Hercos contributed no information unobtainable from newspapers, and in some cases he had no part in the investigation whatsoever. And there's more information there, including that he appeared 3 times on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. Well, there you go, just a couple of examples of Psychic detectives, so-called psychic detectives being mentioned over the years in the newspaper archives in the United States. And we wouldn't have to look far here in this country. In fact, on my own personal, in my own personal archives, I've got many references to so-called psychic detectives and what I can only describe as completely deluded people who go to crime scenes or near crime scenes and try to communicate with murder victims by use of spirit boxes or their own psychic dreams or insights or what have you. Yes, there's lots of information to be gleaned from the pages of digital archives because you never know what you might find. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast this week, and thank you to those people who continue to support the Skeptic Zone via Patreon or PayPal. I thank you at the end of every episode because it means that there is a show. Your contribution means the Skeptic Zone keeps going. It pays the bills. It enables me to bring you the show each week. And if you've listened to the show for a long time, why not become a financial supporter? Doesn't cost much. It can cost less than $5 a week. Just head to skepticzone.tv and click those links. Or, if you so desire, you can scroll to the bottom of the page at skepticzone.tv and maybe buy one of my digital prints. I don't think they're NFTs. I don't think it works that way. No, you just buy one of my origami prints. Right off the website there's a large selection to choose from and a couple of free ones too if you want to have one. Coming up on next week's show, the Trove Archives looks at references to my old friend James Randi. What a lot of happy memories I have of my times with James the Amazing Randi. Also, we'll be talking to a dear friend of mine, Dr. Siobhan O'Sullivan, about the recent legislation changes here in this state, New South Wales, to allow assisted dying. A very important topic with a very wonderful person indeed, Dr. Siobhan O'Sullivan. Look out for that. But for this week, with a new government here in Australia starting tomorrow, as far as I know, the Prime Minister will step down and the Leader of the Opposition will head to Government House in Canberra and accept a commission by the Governor-General. It's all very magical. This is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for show notes, contacts, and to access the back catalogue of episodes going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone podcast on Twitter at Skeptic Zone, visit our Facebook page, or leave a review on iTunes. You can also support the Skeptic Zone via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone podcast is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian skeptics or any other skeptical organisation.
You should read it, the Scottish.
Where's the Scottish one?
That's the Naughty Ghost 2.
Oh, Naughty Ghost 2 is Scottish?
It's a historic joke.
Naughty Ghosts 2!
Yes!
Psychic claims ghost violated him. Psychic ghost hunter claims he was violated by a ghost while visiting an historic jail in Scotland.
Made me lose my voice. I lost my voice again. Oh my god.
I'll do a Scottish take.
Okay, do a Scottish take.